you have seen my last video, I love Red Rising, at least the first trilogy. They're action packed, fun, has a lot of heart and emotion in it. I thought it was an absolute blast to read. I really love this series. And after finishing Morning Star, I thought I would hop right into Iron Gold. And I heard that the second trilogy, by a few different people, was even better than the first one. And unfortunately, I found myself very disappointed in just the way that the Iron Gold turned out. I want to talk about a few general details first, before I talk about spoilers, and then I'll get into the spoiler parts and specific things that I wasn't really a big fan of in this book. Now, the first half of this book I thought was alright. It wasn't necessarily great, but I was at least invested in what was happening. I thought the different POVs, point of views, were interesting, although it brought about some pacing issues later that I'll talk about as well. And there's a time skip in this book, which I thought it was a good idea. See what happens after the first trilogy 10 years later. I thought that was interesting. And I really like the way that the world has changed since the events of Morning Star. I also like seeing new characters from different colors, such as grays and I think and reds, other reds, and just other colors. And I thought that was an interesting part of it. Although I feel like I still lack clarity on some of them, such as silvers and colors like that, or we don't get a huge amount on. But I still think it's good though. And I also like the way that the book ended. I won't say anything more about that for those who haven't read it, but I really like the ending of this book. I thought the ending was good. And yeah, now unfortunately, I need to talk about my disappointments. And for this part, I am going to move into spoilers, just since it's hard to describe what didn't work for me without going into depth on what happened in the story. So the first thing is that the tone is very, very different. I don't think this is a bad thing, and I understand that Pierce Brown wanted to go for a serious tone, which I think the first trilogy just is, I think it's pretty serious. But I think at times it's too serious. Like, I can't recall a single moment where something funny happened or any moment that made me smile or laugh. I'm not saying that has to be like Marvel or anything where every single part is trying to make you laugh or trying to be funny and it loses any seriousness. But I think that a joke every once in a while or something funny that happens in the story can benefit a story a lot. But unfortunately, I don't really feel like there was any funny parts, and I feel like that's something that was unfortunately missing for me in this book. And I think the only part that I can really think of off the top of my head that was funny is like the Ash Lord being burned alive, just because it's ironic. Like, he burnt a moon and now he's getting burnt alive. I mean, obviously very dark, but I think there is some humor to that in a sense. And I think that the first trilogy had a very serious tone while still having funny moments with the characters. For example, Severo. And Severo had, in the first trilogy, was very funny. And he had a bunch of jokes. He had a funny personality. But he also had serious moments, such as the hanging scene in Morning Star was a serious moment with Severo. And I think that's a fantastic moment, one of my favorite parts in the series. Same with Severo's wedding. I love his wedding as well, where he gets married and it's very funny and everything. But I feel like I don't remember Severo being very funny in this one. And of course, it's 10 years later. The characters change. And at first, I think there was a few things about him being stinky and stuff like that, but it just wasn't the same. It didn't feel like the same. I feel like all the same characters that we knew just became much more serious, and they were always mad or upset about something. And I think that's common with Grim Dark, which I think that this series is moving into, which is fine. But I also think when you go into Grim Dark or like a huge dark tone, there's some problems that can arise with that. And I just hope that it doesn't fall into some of those pitfalls. And for me, I feel like it made it hard to care about the characters in this one. when there's no like moments of hope or joy in it that makes you engaged. I just feel like, yeah, the characters went through a lot. I feel like because there was nothing like enjoyable in it, that it was hard to really like the characters as well or root for them. And oddly enough, I found Lysander's point of view to be the most interesting and the character that I liked the most. I thought his storyline was interesting. I thought his character was interesting, especially coming into him after the events of the first trilogy where so much has happened. And I like Cassius as well, and I like his kind of mentor role for Lysander, which I thought was really interesting, especially because I know Lysander becomes a villain in this series, and I think that that will be interesting to see in the next book. And part of the issue is that I went straight from Morning Star into Iron Gold, and I feel like because the tone was so different, it threw me off, and it was like reading a completely different series by a completely different author. I was just kind of like, what the heck? So I think that that's part of it. I think that because there is a time skip, I think it would be good to wait a little bit before you jump into this. Maybe 6 months, a month or two, 6 months, whatever. Sometime before you jump right into the next one. Just because the tone's different, the pacing's different, and it's just going to be weird jumping into it. And although I was disappointed with this book, I didn't think it was horrible. There were good moments in it, and of course, the writing itself was great. I thought that, you know, Pierce Brown is a great writer. He makes it interesting to read, at least, you know, the writing style and everything. I just think the plot and the characters were kind of lacking and weren't very compelling, especially when it's just like, you know, that it's just going to be gritty and dark and lack of joy or hope and stuff like that. And I just feel like it could have been better in that. And I will read Dark Age in the near future, but I do need a break to read some other books first. I just finished Dungeon Crawler Carl, which I thought was good. Maybe I'll make a video on it, probably not. It was a good book, wasn't the biggest fan of it either, but I will continue with that series as well. And just to read some other books as well. But my main concern for this series is just that it will become dark and gruesome for the point of being dark and gruesome. I'm all for some dark and gruesome content, just as long as it has a point. I feel like when it just happens for no reason, unless there's a reason for that, like Blood Meridian, I just don't enjoy it. I don't think it's compelling or interesting without some light and hope and joy in it. That's the problem I have with Warhammer as well. The series started off with very good, like it had wholesome moments throughout it, then it just became dark to the point where it's self-parroting itself, and I hope that doesn't happen to this series. I'm not opposed to having dark themes, and I thought the first trilogy was plenty dark as well, but I just hope there's also hope and good in it as well. And I will, however, keep my judgments off until I read the next book. I have heard the next book is darker, Dark Age. I mean, obviously it's in the title, dark, but I hope that its story will turn me around for the rest of the books, for Dark Age, Lightbringer, and Red God, I think, is the next one that's going to come out. So I do want to finish the series, and hopefully I will like it. And yeah, but let me know your thoughts about Iron Gold, or even on Dark Age, and just any thoughts, any encouragement on reading it. And until next time, I hope you have an awesome day or night, wherever. And yeah, see you guys later.